The best of Money Matters. Right Business.
Welcome to The Right Business, where we dive deep into stories of trailblazers who dare to disrupt the status quo, find the gap in the market to find the right business. Hello, I'm Hongbin Jeong. Now, cancer remains one of the most devastating health challenges of our time, taking over 10 million lives every year. Early and accurate diagnosis is critical in the fight against this disease, yet it's one of the most complex and time-sensitive tasks in medicine. Diagnosing cancer often requires pathologists to sift through vast amounts of data looking for what can feel like a tiny hidden clue in a haystack. Enter Qritive, a company that is redefining the role of AI in healthcare by tackling some of the biggest challenges in cancer diagnosis. Now, founded in 2017, Qritive has developed advanced AI-powered tools that empower pathologists, enabling them to analyze cases faster with greater accuracy and confidence. So to find out more about how Qritive is transforming the landscape of cancer diagnostics and healthcare, joining us today is Bruno Occhipinti, who is the COO of Qritive. Bruno, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me, Bruno. Bruno, just to get some background here, what gap in cancer diagnosis did you identify when starting Qritive?
Yeah, it's a known problem that we have increasingly cancer cases in the world. So every year now, you've got 20 million new cancer cases that are identified. And the challenge is that typically we see a decline in the number of pathologists worldwide. And it means that for many patients, they cannot have access to these diagnostics on time. There are delays. Cost is also going up very, very fast. And the last problem we are facing is that the clinical mistakes are increasingly common. So in that context, if you want to minimize the burden on the patients and also on the clinician as well, you need to find alternatives. The last thing I just wanted to add is that if you look at the statistics today, pretty much half of the world doesn't have access to proper diagnostics at this point in time. So if you want to really save lives and try to minimize this 10 million number of deaths every year, you need to do better in terms of diagnostics.
Right. So cancer diagnosis, as you mentioned, is one of the most challenging areas of medicine, requiring accuracy and speed. And you've decided to create Qritives, which is revolutionizing cancer diagnosis through AI. So your AI products currently analyze colon and prostate cancers. Could you walk us through how your technology works and what ensures its accuracy?
Yeah, I need to first describe what's happening typically in a normal environment for diagnostics. So the way it works for many labs for the past few decades is that typically you've got a biopsy done, an image is captured, and then you've got a glass slide that will contain this body sample, this tissue sample. And then typically after that, the pathologist will use a microscope and will identify if there is indeed presence of the disease, the grading, and so on. But that's a heavy process, and it's not working well when you don't have enough resources and you have to deal with too many cases. So instead of that, what you can imagine is that this particular tissue sample will be digitized by a scanner, so from Roche, Motic, and so on. Once it's digitized, you can use AI to analyze the tissue sample on a computer, and then it will identify the presence of the disease. It will grade it as well. It will provide very, very, very specific information in terms of the volume, the scoring of the case, and so on. And all these insights will be shared with the pathologist, and the pathologist will make a final decision at the end of the day so that it goes faster. And also, the level of accuracy is much higher as a result.
I see. Well, are there any limitations to the types of cancers your AI can currently analyze, and how are you working to expand this capability?
Yeah, the challenge with cancer, because it's a very, we call it cancer, but we have many, many types of cancer. So you don't have a solution that will address all the types of cancer in just one single application. So you have to develop one application for each type of cancer, unfortunately. So typically the limit is related to the data set, because you need to have the data set related to that particular condition. You need to have a data set that is broad and diverse enough so that you can, after that, develop an AI solution that you can deploy everywhere in the world with the same level of accuracy. And that's what is quite a challenge, because today accessing data is extremely difficult because health-related data are very well protected, rightfully so. But as a result, it will put a burden on the developer to build those solutions that the world needs, in fact. And then once you've got those data, you need after that to annotate those images so that you can train your AI engines to recognize the patterns and categorize the cases very accurately. And annotating those slides can be quite demanding. A lot of effort is required because it's a painstakingly difficult exercise to conduct. So for all those reasons, it's affecting the ability to develop those solutions. The thing we do is that we try to engage with many healthcare institutions across the world. We try to diversify our sources of data. And then we work very closely with pathologists to understand exactly the needs and where we want to prioritize our assets.
I see. Well, misdiagnosis can, of course, have life-altering consequences. How does your technology reduce the risk of error and improve the overall quality of pathology reports?
Yeah, I mean, it's true that mistakes are common, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not saying it's unavoidable, let's put it that way, because sometimes it's very small tissue sample that is showing the presence of malignancy, and it's very hard for the human eyes to see it, especially when you have dealt with 20, 25 cases in one day. It's unavoidable at some point you might make a mistake. So the good thing is that with AI will basically be your companion, your clinical decision support system, so that when you have maybe analyzed a couple of slides and then you have certain concern about certain slides in particular, AI can step in. AI will basically analyze the slide for you, will spot the areas where it has identified the presence of the disease. It will grade as well disease presence. It will extract all the insights as well and then share this information with you to minimize the likelihood of mistakes and increase the speed at which you will decide. Also, it will bring you a lot of comfort level because of that. And we have many clinical evidence showing that we do that accurately. So we have done a study, for example, in the context of India, where we went from the classic process was leading to 11 misdiagnoses. And misdiagnosis means that you release a patient saying that you're totally fine when the patient is actually affected by the disease. So we went from 11 misdiagnoses before down to 2 after the use of the solution. And that's a significant gain because for the 9 people that have been rightfully assessed as carrying the disease, then the treatment can start and then the decision can be taken afterwards.
I see. Well, your tools are also reportedly improving pathology reporting times by up to 10-fold. Can you give us an example of how this has impacted a patient or a lab?
Yeah, so for example, this typically, when you look at the speed, this will affect, for example, the workflow. So certain hospitals, for example, or labs, one in particular that comes to mind, they have changed the way they handle the process overall. So instead of looking at each and every slide very, very thoroughly, and sometimes losing a lot of time because many of those slides are actually benign. And so there is no point in actually dedicating time to that. The way it works, they analyze all the slides with AI. AI will identify the malignant cases, and then the level of sensitivity that the solution has is extremely high. So AI will not miss pretty much any sort of cases that are of interest for you. So AI will run this entire process, will triage for you all the cases that you need to spend time on. And consequently, you will, instead of looking at, let's say, 100 cases, let's put it simply, you will be looking at maybe 50, 60, 70 of those cases. The time you save is actually beneficial because then this is a time that they can reinvest in the cases that are real, where a patient is most likely affected by the disease. And you will be able to really zoom on those patients that really need you the most.
I see. I mean, pathologists, they are at the heart of cancer diagnosis, and your product is designed to make their work more effective and less stressful. How does your technology kind of help ease this burden and improve their efficiency? What has been the feedback been like amongst them?
Yeah, so obviously, if you are dealing with cancer, the 2 primary elements is the speed. That's one. But most importantly is the accuracy. So you don't want to make mistakes because you're not diagnosing, you're diagnosing something that will affect potentially tremendously the life of a patient. So these 2 parameters is what you're focusing on. And for speed, it's not just about the time it takes to do the analysis of a case. It's also the time it takes for some pathologists to align on a case because very often these days you don't have just one assessment. You have 2 or 3 pathologists looking at a case, especially if the case is complex. So to minimize the friction and to align the point of view on the final decision for a case, AI can step in and really let's say, minimize the discordance you may have between the different pathologists. And just to give you one example of what it means at times, this when I speak about accuracy, we have been contacted by an hospital we are close to and who have been helping us from the very beginning developing the solution. And then they raised one of those interesting situations where they had identified a patient with clear malignant presence in a body tissue. But the case was categorized at a certain level. And then after that, when we run the AI, we identified a very small presence of a fairly high-grade cancer. Oh, wow. And that alone changed completely the next step for that patient, because once you get to this particular level of grading in the penetration of the disease in the tissue, it means that it requires after that a surgery. The process, the treatment afterwards can change dramatically based on these diagnostics. And that's where basically this type of AI solution can minimize this kind of mistake and save lives in the long run.
Right. Well, Qritive has managed to stand out in a field dominated by larger players with more funding. I mean, you've also been called the Porsche of histopathology AI companies. What do they mean by this, and why do you think your solutions are deserving of this comparison?
I'm not sure we have had the same impact that Porsche had in its own domain. A couple of things nonetheless. One is that when it comes to building those solutions, I think what we try to do is to really be very, very precise in the way we build these solutions. And one way of doing it is basically to develop annotations that are very extensive, very thorough, with very large data set coming from different environments, different geographies, and so on, so that we get to a point where the solution we built will really be accurate, will really be what we call generalizable. So you will be able to deploy it pretty much everywhere in the world, and you will maintain this high level of accuracy. And that's, I think, maybe where you could say there is a parallel with Porsche, because of that level of sophistication in preparing the data, in making sure that we have something thorough and comprehensive enough so that we can perform. Having said that, there is a problem to that, is that we are trying hard to do health equity, to enable access, to make it affordable and accurate at scale to provide diagnosis. So as much as I love the parallel with Porsche, we are not trying to deliver diagnosis only for the most affluent population of the world. The point of this technology is really to unlock the access, and so that the cost has to go down.
Right. Amazing. Well, the fight against cancer is an ongoing challenge, and Qritive has an important role to play in the future. So, Bruno, what's next for Qritive? Are there any exciting features or partnerships you're working on that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, we'll have to be careful about what I'm sharing. But we did close an important collaboration agreement with Roche Diagnostics a couple of months back. You may have seen it in the news. Otherwise, we're working on a couple of new modules that will be released in the coming quarters. One for breast cancer and another one as well for bone marrow. And this is going to really help different levels, the clinicians that are operating on the ground. We are also finalizing a fundraising as well. We are closing a bridge round in the coming months, so that we can enable more marketing activities, more sales in key areas, primarily in Asia Pacific and Middle East as well. And then to finalize that, we need also, we will be working hard on the regulatory side as well in a number of geographies, because just keep in mind, all those products are typically heavily regulated. And before releasing any sort of solution, you have to imagine the amount of time and money you have to invest in making sure that the product has been validated, extensively tested by different organizations before being provided to the clinician. So that's a big part of what's going to happen in the next few months.
I see. We've got about a minute left of our interview here. So Bruno, very quickly, how do you see Qritive contributing to the global fight against cancer, and how do you intend to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, for us, there are a number of ways to doing that. I mean, one is to expand the portfolios. We cover more important cases and more important modules so that we serve the pathologist as best as we can. That's one aspect, and we are actively driving that agenda. The second aspect is that we are still a young company, so we have a number of sites that will be deployed in the coming months, and we need to execute flawlessly on these deployments. So a lot of effort will be dedicated in the next few months to make sure that we operationalize the way we deploy those solutions, and we also not only operationalize, but also we because that's an important factor. We also devise the best methodology to build trust among the pathologists, because AI is still in its infancy when it comes to adoption in a healthcare environment. So you need to figure out what's the best way to build that connection with the pathologist, to explain and put the right boundary in terms of what AI can or cannot do, and make sure that there is a mutual understanding that AI is meant as a companion, as a support system mechanism for them, and then by no means something that can replace anyone in the process. So that's a very important aspect, because more importantly, you want adoption, you want comfort level among the clinicians.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Bruno, for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you. That was Bruno Occhipinti, who is the COO of Qritive. This has been The Right Business with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.